We're back with another episode of Common Knowledge where I look at some common Magic the Gathering cards, tell you if they're any good in Pauper or not, and maybe which decks they could go in. Are we going to have a better day than we had Friday? Almost assuredly not. It's going to be tough to beat Ashnod's Altar. But let's see. Who knows? We'll start off with our first card of the day, which whenever my internet decides to do it, there we go. It is Baron's Unmaking. It is 1 and a blue for an instant. You return target permanent to its owner's hand. If that permanent shares a color with the most common color among all permanents, or a color tied for the most common. All right, originally from Invasion, which it's not the first set to have multicolors, but it's a set that was like really started to stress multicolor as a mechanic, and so you got a lot of these cards that really cared about colors or the most amount of colors or things like that. I would not say this is great. Like it is permanent, so it is, I guess, in some ways better than an unsummon, but I think the restrictions of the color is going to be really tough. You'll find some monocolor decks in Pauper, elves, mono red, burn, stuff like that, mono black sacrifice, mono blue terror. There's plenty of those kinds of decks out there, but it's not even just the most common color among opponent stuff. It's all stuff, and you're playing blue. So if you're playing blue, that means blue has a better chance of being the most common, and maybe you won't if you're playing a mono black deck or something. You have less opportunity to be able to bounce the things that you want to bounce. I wouldn't even use this as a sideboard card because it's so niche and narrow in its potential use case, and that's tough because I think this could be cool, like a 2-mana bounce something. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you what's potentially interesting. You don't worry about bouncing your opponent's stuff. You worry about bouncing your own stuff. And there's lots of Pauper decks that want to bounce their own stuff. The problem with that is that there's a lot of cards that already do this. In blue, for one and a blue, you could play Dreamstalker, which returns a permanent you control to its owner's hand. And it's a 1/5 creature. Not at instant speed, but it gets you a body. And that's generally, I would say, more valuable. I could see this as, okay, I have this in my self bounce deck, and I'm mostly going to self bounce my own stuff. I'm probably monocolor to make sure that it works, that it's the most common color among the permanents. And then if I get lucky, it's nice to have as an option if my opponent is also playing blue or has also played a monocolor deck where they put down a bunch of green elves or whatever. I still don't think you're going to find enough usefulness out of this card, but it's kind of cool. It's kind of interesting. I could see its use cases, but those use cases are, like I said, extremely narrow. I think we can give this I'll give it a 2.4, and we'll move on. Our next card, this is a pretty good one. Rafine's Informant is 1 and a white for a 2/1 human wizard. When this creature enters, it connives, which means you draw a card, then you discard a card. And if the discarded card was a non-land card, you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. This is pretty much a staple for White Weenie decks, and some other decks as well, but I think White Weenie most specifically is the one that plays Rafine's Informant. White decks are generally not great at drawing cards, so having this as an option to filter through more of your deck is pretty nice. It's also really nice in White Weenie to discard your Prismatic Strands that you can use your flashback on, or your Battle Screech that you can use your flashback on. So this has a number of use cases in those decks while also just being a pretty decent body. Imagine putting down 2-mana 3/2 in white. It's not too bad at all. So decent body, filters through your deck, also enables some of the graveyard strategies that you can get in mono white and potentially other decks. But again, mono white is the one it's usually put in. This is pretty good. This is a real ass Pauper card. We don't always get those on this series. I will give this a 6, just a 6, and I think that's a pretty good score. Imagining that 5 is. This is like the cutoff for Pauper playability is 5, and everything above a 5 is a card that more or less sees play or should see play in Pauper. Anything below a 5 is maybe extremely niche or getting into more niche ideas for Pauper decks. And then, you get into the 1s and low 2s and you go, you probably shouldn't play these cards at all. All right, let's keep on moving to Red Mage's Rapier. Rapier. Lots of ways to pronounce that, depending on how European you want to get with your pronunciation here. Red Mage's Rapier is 1 and a red for an artifact equipment. It has Job Select, so when this equipment enters, you create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token, then attach this to it. Equipped creature has, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +2/+0 until the end of turn, and is a wizard in addition to its other types, and it equips for 3. I like these Job Select equipments. Black Mage's Rod, I don't know if we've actually done Black Mage's Rod on the show. That's my favorite one. I think that's the best one in Pauper, and I don't think it's particularly close. I think the other ones are just not nearly as good as Black Mage's Rod. This would be number 2, I think. I think I can pretty safely say this would be the second best of those equipment. Maybe the white one. You could argue that maybe the white one is pretty good, but I think this one's also pretty solid in relatively aggressive decks, or I was gonna say Gutter Snipe decks, but Gutter Snipe wants instants and sorceries, right? There are a number of non-creature burn abilities, and Red Mage's Rapier works with those as something that enables the burn, but also is a creature. So it's nice to have a creature on a non-creature spell, and then also continues to enable that strategy by whenever you cast another non-creature spell, maybe another Red Mage's Rapier, this thing grows and is able to swing in for more and more. So I don't mind it. This is a card that is just a 1/1 most of the time, or the creature is a 1/1 most of the time, so it can get picked off pretty easily by lots of different abilities. But even then, you do have the ability to equip it to something else later. It's not bad. It's an option, I would say. I think I would give this a 5, as like I've actually seen this in a deck list. I've seen people talk about potentially putting this in a deck list, but I haven't actually seen anybody put this in a deck list, including me. I just made a red-white equipment deck, and this didn't go in it. And it was something I considered, but it's not something that actually went into it. I think this is probably a really good limited card for Final Fantasy. I did not play red when I played in Final Fantasy Limited, but it's okay. It's okay. I think 5 is a totally good score for this. As, like I said, Pauper playable, maybe not the best Pauper card. Let's keep on going to Pressure Point, which is 1 and a white for an instant. You tap target creature, and you draw a card. That's not bad. That's really not bad. As you can see, my voice went up a little higher on that one. So I don't think it's amazing, but instant speed, tap a creature, draw a card, cantrip kind of effect, tempo-y kind of effect. In white, I think you'd be expecting more of something like this in blue. But in white, it's not terrible. Originally from Fate Reforged. I don't remember any of these arts, so I don't know. I think it's all right. I don't know what deck it necessarily goes in. Does it go in White Weenie? Maybe. It could. But I think you'd probably want to find, like, those decks want to put more creatures on the board more than they want to get tempo. Maybe there's some kind of Azorius tempo deck out there, a little control-y, a little tempo-y, that might be able to put good use to this. But if you're in blue, you probably have better ways of drawing cards. You're kind of seeing the pitfalls in real time here, where I'm trying to think of where this card could go. I don't think it's bad. I think kind of like Red Mage's Rapier, it's a totally fine card that probably has slightly finer cards available to a player, and they don't end up playing this. But I'll say this is probably even better than the Red Mage's Rapier. I'll give this a 5.1. We're getting some pretty playable cards today. We had Ashnod's Altar on episode 80, and that was amazing. But we're getting lots of pretty good cards on this one, and quantity versus quality. It's something to consider. Phyrexian Monitor is 3 and a black for a 2/2 Phyrexian skeleton, and you can pay black to regenerate this creature. I like these older creatures that regenerate for really cheaply. It feels like they just stay on the board all the time. So if you don't know what regenerate is, I think we've talked about it on the channel before, but just as a refresher, because it's not a mechanic that Wizards uses anymore. I don't know if they've completely officially retired it, but they've mostly officially retired it. Regenerate means if this thing was going to die, whether by combat damage or a lightning bolt or something like that, you can pay a black and you can regenerate this creature, which means to tap the creature and remove it from combat if it was in combat, and to remove all the damage from it if it had damage on it. And it saves the creature. So somebody could lightning bolt this again after you've regenerated it, and they could kill it again, or they could just probably respond to you trying to regenerate the creature and kill it then. But in any case, regenerate is a way of, it's not indestructibility exactly, but in a lot of ways it kind of is. It's a great way of stalling up the board if your opponent doesn't have a trample creature, doesn't have a flying creature, and you just need to get in the way of something. This isn't bad against something like Slivers, which is mostly just a deck about going super wide and making everything big, but not trample exactly. This is a card that can block one of those things pretty reliably. Now you need to keep the mana up to be able to do that. More specifically, this card is not that good. 4 mana for a 2/2, even when it can basically block forever and not die. That's asking a little bit too much from the cost. I do like this art though. What a creepy looking art, but I kind of dig it. So this specific card isn't that good, but I think keep an eye out for regenerate, especially regenerate costs that are cheap like this one, like a single mana. Those are cards to consider for your decks, and if you can find one at the right price from a mana perspective, then I think you should really consider it. Let's see, what do we give this thing? Again, the mana cost for just getting the creature on the board in the first place is not great. So I think you can give this something like a... let's give it a 2. Let's give it a 2. Next up is the Brink of Disaster for 2 and double black. It's an enchantment aura that enchants a creature or a land. Interesting. When enchanted permanent becomes tapped, you destroy it. Okay. A little bit of land destruction, kind of. They get to use their land one more time, but it definitely discourages. You put this on an Urza's Tower or something, and now you've probably pissed off your opponent. And putting on a creature is fine, I guess, but it still allows that creature on the opponent's side to block. It still allows them to, well, I guess it doesn't allow them to attack, because if they attack, they die before any damage is dealt. But it does, let them block all day. So for 4 mana, is that really what you want to do? Land destruction in Pauper, even in black, is cheaper than this, and in other colors, definitely cheaper than this. And killing creatures in black is way cheaper than this. Sure, they don't necessarily go on the same card like this does, but this is too much mana for too little effect, and you're giving your opponent too much agency on when something gets destroyed. And you'd rather choose when something gets destroyed, right? Yeah, I don't love this. Not really at all. I'll give this a 1.8. Still removal, but it's pretty bad removal. Endangered Armadon is 2 and double green for a 4/5 elephant. When you control a creature with toughness 2 or less, you sacrifice this creature. I don't think that's very good. So you can only play big stuff. or this dies. I imagine back in Stronghold when this was originally printed and still creatures in Magic were not necessarily the best. This seemed like a good rate. Oh, green gets slightly better rates than other colors of creatures. So 4 mana for a 4/5, that's pretty good. Pretty good in green. And but maybe too good in green. Nah, these days this would not be too good in green. So they felt like they had to put a downside on it of forcing you to play with bigger stuff. I like the flavor here though. This idea that the elephant, when it's roaming around with all of its other big elephant friends, no problem at all. But it's when these small guys, these little hunters show up that this thing gets killed, and that's why it's endangered. That's cute. I like that a lot. It doesn't make me want to play the card anymore. And I would say this is a 1. This is definitely a 1. These days you can find 4 mana 4/5s or 4 mana even biggers for that have upside or much more upside than a card like this that has a downside. You don't need this at all. This is a 1. Fun card to think about though, not to play. What do we got next? It's Eye Collector from Throne of Eldraine. It is a single black mana for a 1/1 fairy with flying, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, each player mills a card. Okay, couple problems here. One is fairy is a really competitive creature type, and we have a lot of fairies that are better than this. Fairies tend to also be mostly blue. The fairies that get played in Pauper. There's some Dimir fairies that you can play, but I think when you play Dimir fairies, it gets even more competitive for a card like this for a slot, and this card doesn't make it there. I also don't love that each player mills a card. I mean, sure, you have this in your kind of self-mill strategies, but it doesn't mill enough to self-mill you, and there are enough graveyard decks that people play in Pauper that milling them for only a single one can often bite you more than it can help you. This would either need to be like a Persistent Petitioners thing where you are milling lots of cards from an opponent, so you're getting hard on the mill strategy, which this card doesn't do, or you need it to exile the cards in some way, or make them discard maybe would be even better, but it just, as is, I mean, it's a 1/1 flyer that's a 1-drop. That's the best thing about it, but we have a bunch of other cards that do that, and I think the extra ability on it is potentially actively harmful for you, and if not that, at least not strong enough to really rate. Let's give this thing, because it is a 1/1 flyer for 1, and those are going to be able to do some damage, right? I think you can give this thing like a 2.2 maybe, and we'll keep on going to Reckless Brute. It's 2 and a red for a 3/1 Ogre Warrior with haste, and this creature attacks each combat if able. Not very good. 3 mana for this effect is a little much, and 3/1. It ends up kind of feeling more like a not a combat trick exactly, more like a removal spell, like a lightning bolt. But again, it gives your opponent the opportunity to say which creature they want to lose, because whichever creature they want to choose to block with. In the best case scenario, you are clearing the board so this thing can come in and do 3 damage at a time. But I think we have other cards that can kind of do that. Forcing this creature to attack every time lends less strategic options to you, and the 1 toughness allows this thing to get picked off by lots of different little things that will annoy you. And if you're playing a 3-drop in red, you kind of want it to be better than this, especially like if you're in like a mono red burn or something. You sometimes don't even have 3 drops at all. So that's how little those decks think of a card like this, and I will think that with them. I will give this a 1.5 and keep on moving. What do we got next? Anything? Anything after this Reckless Brute? Here we go. It is a Kin Tree Warden. For a single green mana, you get a 1/1 human warrior, and it's got 2 mana to regenerate this creature, and it can also morph for a single mana. Interesting. So morph, we've definitely talked before, but you can cast this card face down as a 2/2 for 3 mana, and turn it face up at any time for its morph cost. Generally, I would say you see morph creatures that the morph is a cheaper way of getting the creature on the board because the creature is a more expensive thing. So you pay your 3 and then you pay a smaller morph cost to flip it, and you get somewhat of a discount on the creature because you did it in installments or something like that. Or it's the same cost, rather. I guess that makes more sense. It's the same cost, but you can pay it in installments, so you can get a 2/2 creature out there earlier, and then flip it when you need to, when it might be more strategic for you. This one's a little bit different in that it's kind of modal. Of hey, I have a turn 1 play here, but this could also be a turn 3 play. And then you do have the ability. We just talked about regenerate creatures earlier. You do have the ability to morph this thing and block something with it and regenerate this creature, and you're just stopping attacks. The opponent thinks they're going to be able to force you to chump on something, and you go, nope, I can just flip this over and regenerate this guy and continue regenerating this guy turn over turn over turn. I like 1-drops that have value later in the game. I don't think this has enough value. It's cute, but I don't think it's cute enough to make its way into any decks, especially not with these creature types. These are not bad creature types, but I wouldn't think they're that good in this color. You'd want it to be, maybe an elf or I don't know, maybe a druid or something like that. Maybe you could have more value with that, but as a human warrior in green, I don't think this does a whole lot for you. It's a neat card. I will give it a halfway decent score and say it's like a 2.8. But you know what? I'll bump it up even further. I'll bump it up to a 3. I think this could be a 3, and I could see its use cases. The regenerate being a generic regenerate cost, say that 3 times fast, is nice. Lots of decks can use that. Double, not just monocolored green decks, but multicolored decks could pay that cost too. But I think you really want your regenerates to cost 1 if you can help it. More like that other card. Anyway, you see the trade-offs there. I still don't think it's a particularly great card, but it's got some value. It's got some ideas around it. Ash Barrens. I don't think we've done Ash Barrens before. Ash Barrens is an interesting card. It's a land that taps for colorless, but it also has basic land cycling. So you can discard this card, search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. It's nice. It's a nice card that it's a land when you need it to be, and it can be another land. It can help fix you when you need that as well. I think Ash Barrens just generally is a little bit wasted, or not wasted. It's a little bit outclassed these days. Now that you have the Lord of the Rings land cyclers, those will go find. Those can find dual lands because they're just looking for land types rather than basics, and those have more modal value on them. As here's a creature, or it enables graveyard things, or for Lorien Revealed, it can draw you a bunch of cards later in the game. It has more value in more different types of situations than Ash Barrens does. I still don't think this is terrible. Yeah, it's not really a fetch land because you have some decks that will try to reanimate lands, and they reanimate fetch lands so they can go find other lands. You see that a little bit in Pauper, especially now that you've got the earthbending stuff where you can sacrifice your land creature, but it comes back as the land, so you're able to do it time and time again. That's kind of cool. Ash Barrens can't do that. I guess it has ways of, if you had ways of returning stuff to your hand, returning lands to your hand, you can do that. But this is a neat card. I think this is maybe a little bit more useful in something like Commander, which is why you see it in a number of Commander products here. but it's a tough sell in most cases. I think we've just kind of outclassed Ash Barons at this point, which is a little sad. 'Cause I think it's cool. I'm still going to give it a halfway decent score. I'm going to give this a 5.5. Lands, just in general, are going to be pretty good, and a land that has a little bit of extra value on this, I think is nice. All right, what do we got? One more card. One more card officially to go. We'll start with the end. We'll end. That's what you do when you get to your last card, is you end with Enchantment Alteration. For a single blue mana, you get an instant. Attach target aura attached to a creature or land to another permanent of that type. Originally from Legends, is the Urza Saga version. Legends, I like the Legends art, but the Urza Saga art is also pretty good. Huh. Okay. There aren't a whole lot of decks that play auras. There is one specific deck that plays auras, and that is Bogle's decks. Having a card that steals your opponent's auras, and you can put them on your creatures. Sorry, that's not true. There's other ones. You can get the like the elf decks or the ramp decks that will play wild growth, or the other enchantment land enchantments, or land auras that enchant lands. Stealing those, and now you get to ramp yourself. That's also kind of interesting. So this would be a sideboard card, if anything. You certainly wouldn't play this in the main deck. There's just not enough of those auras around that would make a difference to require this in the main deck. But in the sideboard, should you play this in the sideboard? And I still think the answer is no. It's really cute that you can steal auras, especially at instant speed. Man, that is... They're trying. They're trying hard to make this somewhat viable. But I think for the most part, you're just going to want to try to destroy those auras. Or you want to play something like Destroy Evil that can either destroy an enchantment or can kill a creature. Or you want to play Thraben Charm that could potentially kill a creature, potentially kill an enchantment, or remove an entire graveyard. Those cards are going to find a little bit more value. Even in blue, you're looking at stuff like Annul to just counter those enchantments from coming onto the board in the first place. I think most of those are better options than Enchantment Alteration. And yet, I kind of dig this. I really kind of dig this. I'm going to give this a 4.9, which is kind of my honorary, man, maybe you should consider this in Pauper, but it doesn't make the cutoff. I don't think you probably should play this, but man, I kind of do want to just buy a couple copies and see what work it could do. White also plays the Standard Bearer in the sideboard, which is a flag bearer card, which means when that if it's on the table, an opponent has to target that, and they can't target anything else on the board. So that's really good against Bogle's decks, because any enchantment aura they play, it will have to go on your flag bearer rather than their own creatures, and it does help to really stop that deck. That's a better way of stopping those decks than Enchantment Alteration. And yet, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I dig it. I think 4.9 is probably a better score than, almost assuredly is a better score than it deserves. But I really like the idea of some crazy blowout you can do against a Bogle's deck. They swing in. They've got the Armadillo Cloak. They've got the Ethereal Armor. They've got so many auras on this creature, and they think they're fine to just swing in and that they're going to murder you. And you go in and you go, actually, I'm going to take that Ethereal Armor. And now I get the +1/+1 for enchantments and first strike. Maybe you're actually able to block their other creature now. Maybe you take the Armadillo Cloak and you can gain life and lose the trample on them, so you're able to chump better, or gain life, or even be strong enough that you take the enchantment away from them and you're able to take it. Probably the best one is the Ancestral Mask, because that counts enchantments on the table, not just that you control like the other ones do. So you're now using all their enchantments against them by having the Ancestral Mask. You get all the +2/+2s for each enchantment on the board, and and then you can block and blow them out. That's a really appealing thing to do. It's just pretty narrow. How many Bogle's decks do you really play against, and how many opportunities will you have to do that? Still, cool card. Cool card. Let's do a bonus card and then get out of here. It's Gone Town of Ruin. I'm pretty sure we've done towns before. They're not great. I mean, there's not a ton of town support in Pauper. You get like Town Greeter, which is maybe the best one, but those go in the dredge decks, and the dredge decks really don't want this either, because if they're looking for dual lands, they're going to do it with their Troll of Khazad-dûns and other cards like that, your Generous Ents, to go find the dual typal lands and go find those instead. The towns, they're just kind of another regular dual land. They're fine. I guess I'll give this like a 4. Just for the slight town stuff that you can do with it, but I'm pretty sure I've scored these already. I'm not going to count these. I'm going to do another bonus card. Majestic Metamorphosis is 2 and a blue for an instant. Until the end of turn, target artifact or creature becomes a 4/4 angel artifact creature and gains flying. And you draw a card. That's a lot of stuff. That's a decent amount of stuff that this thing does. Interesting card. Huh. Being able, so this has use on both offense and defense. You know, offensively, if you have Cryogen Relic, I suppose is probably the best option if you're already in blue here. That's an artifact that a lot of decks play. You turn your Cryogen Relic into a 4/4 angel with flying, and you draw a card, so you're drawing another card. And now you can swing in with your 4/4 flyer, get in a bunch of damage. That's okay. Or you have an empty board, or empty of creatures anyway, and your opponent swings in thinking they're going to be fine, and you play this down as an instant to animate your Cryogen Relic, and now you block with it and blow the opponent out. That's also pretty good. And you draw a card still. That's pretty good too. You could play this on the bridges, the artifact bridges that are indestructible. So now you have an indestructible, because those are artifacts. You have an indestructible 4/4 flyer. That could be really good for both blocking or attacking. Lots of good options. I have a blue-black deck. I think I might have mentioned it before. I have a blue-black deck that is looking to animate lands either with Earthbending or Kenku Artificer, and I didn't know about this card. I don't think this card is necessarily the best in that that deck that I've got, but it's if somebody played this in that deck, I could see it being pretty cool. Also, that deck, when it does animate lands or animate artifacts through Kenku, those are all just +1/+1 counters. So this can even still work on those things and now make it even bigger. So Kenku puts 3? Yeah, Kenku puts 3 +1/+1 counters on a non-creature artifact, and it becomes a 0/0 homunculus artifact creature with flying. So now it's a 0/0 with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. Then you put this on it on one of those turns, and it makes it a base 4/4 with the 3 counters. So now it's a 7/7. We're kind of talking. And you draw a card. You can't forget that you draw a card with this too. I like it. I'm gonna give this a I'm gonna give this a 4.7. But I might buy a couple copies of this. This is pretty cool. All right, that's enough for today. We'll catch you next time. Bye.